It's the podcast series where we talk about succeeding in your business and the other well-beings that make life's successes a little bit more balanced and complete. Now, in this podcast, we will discuss your vocational journey while challenging these four other important well-beings in your life: your spiritual, your relational, your physical, and finally, your philanthropical well-being. Challenging what you do with what you have been blessed with is what that whole idea of philanthropical well-being is. Today's topic, guys, is so important and such a tough subject to discuss, but our special guests are going to be bringing a bit of light and hope to everyone listening today. Today is about giving back, honestly, as many are in need. I'm your co-host. I'm J.A. Dava. I'm one of the co-founders and senior coaches with Latreia Coaching and Consulting. And I'm with my co-host, friend, my colleague, co-founder, and my brother, Paul Waldrup. How are you, Paul?
Jay, I'm great. I love doing these because the topics are they're broad and they're specific at the same time, right? We cover a number of different topics, but then we just go a little bit deeper in them. And I just think it brings light to so many different areas of our life. And that's what I love, the diversity of what we talk about. Pretty excited about today.
Yeah. And you know what, today, and I already opened it up, Paul, from the perspective that it's a bit sensitive. It's a bit it's a tougher subject, but it's so necessary right now. So what do we have in store today, Paul?
Yeah. So, you talk about the well-beings. I think this topic is bigger than just any one of the five well-beings. And I think the five well-beings, right? Your vocation, your spiritual life, your relationships, your physical well-being, and, your financial. All of that can impact what today's topic is about, and it's about emotional and mental well-being. And what we're going to be talking about is mental health and suicide awareness. And life happens, and it happens so unexpectedly, and it can catch us off guard. But this whole idea of mental health and suicide awareness, if we sit down and think about it, we all know somebody who's been touched by this. Some much more deeper and closer than we imagine. And some of us have been, impacted by it directly. So we've got Scott and Lisa Johnson coming to talk to us about this today. And I'm telling you, whenever we do these podcasts, we always spend a little bit of time in advance, right? I wish our audience could be a part of that discussion because it is just so rich. Scott's a senior leader with CMG Financial. And Lisa, his wife, they are co-founders of Honor Connor, Hold On to Hope. Their mission and their goal is to provide education and support to those affected by suicide and to provide opportunities to go deeper in conversations and to just eliminate the stigma around mental health and what can happen and ultimately just lead to less suicide. This is such an important topic, but it is an emotional topic. It's a difficult topic, but I think there's a lot that our audience is going to glean from today.
Oh, I cannot wait. Very specifically, it is so timely because it is Suicide Prevention Month, right? And so I absolutely believe that this is probably the most important topic to be talking about this month. So I want to be able to welcome Scott and Lisa. Welcome to our podcast here at Challenging Your Status Quo. First and foremost, thank you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for being a part of our show and for just touching everybody that's going to be listening to this show. You're about to make a huge difference, and we welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you for inviting us. And yes, as you mentioned, September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And we at Honor Connor are sending the message to everyone that we want you to be you because you matter. Be you, you matter. we want people to know that they matter. They matter to God. They matter to their friends. They matter to their family. They matter to their communities, to their coworkers. And we know that in this world, we can start having thoughts that can bring us to a place where we feel like we don't matter and that the world would be better off without us. And those are not really correct messages that your brain is sending you. Those are false messages. And we want to encourage people to not listen to those messages, but instead to focus on the importance of being here and staying here and what your purpose is in this world and that you have so much to contribute. And so that's why we're trying to send this message about being you, you matter. We know that in the United States, there are 132 suicides per day. And that actually the highest rate of suicide is with middle-aged men, believe it or not. And there's more suicide attempts with women, but more men actually complete suicide. And the second leading cause of death for teens in the United States is also suicide. And that number is going up because we have a rising number of girls who are taking their lives. And so we're trying to address that as well. But the other thing people might not realize is that for every one person that dies from suicide, there are up to 100 people that are negatively impacted by that loss. That's over 13,000 people affected by suicide each day in our country. And that's almost 5 million people per year. That's a lot of people affected. In fact, CDC says this: suicide and suicide attempts affect the health and well-being of friends, loved ones, coworkers, and the community. When people die by suicide, their surviving family and friends may experience shock, anger, guilt, symptoms of depression or anxiety, and they also can experience thoughts of suicide. And that's why we do what we do at Honor Connor, because we know firsthand what it's like to experience the loss of someone that you love. We lost our son Connor to suicide after the day after his 25th birthday in 2016. And we experienced many of those things we just talked about. There was shock. We knew he was suffering with some mental health issues. He was using substances to deal with those. And he had cancer. He had a lot of things going on, but he was in a place of getting help and treatment. And so this was a complete shock to us. Our lives were never the same. And so we didn't know where to turn. We didn't know anybody personally who had lost someone to suicide. We were feeling like we were just alone and isolated. And our friends who in family, of course, tried to comfort us, but they didn't really know exactly how we felt. And there was a gap there. So we recognized that gap of support for those who've lost someone to suicide. And so that's why one of the reasons that we created Honor Connor, and specifically our education program called Hold On to Hope. Hold On to Hope is a program where we're really trying to provide education and support to those who have lost someone to suicide. Just a little bit more about our lives and losing Connor. I mean, Connor was a middle child. We had 3 kids, and he was full of life and spirit and very active. And but he got bogged down after he went through his teens and his early adulthood. It became extremely challenging for him. And I know for families who have someone experiencing any kind of mental health crisis, it affects your whole family. And it did affect our whole family. And we reached out to resources and places that we thought could help us in our journey with him and his struggles. And we feel like we did the best we could for Connor. But when you lose someone to suicide, you feel like there's more you could have done. You're always feeling like, what did I say? What did I do? What could I have done better? And those kind of thoughts can just circle around and really bring you down instead of encouraging you. And so we're trying to help people understand the reality of living a life after you've lost someone to suicide. What can that look like? There is light, there is hope. It's not always going to be as bad as it feels in the beginning. It's going to have times where you are going to experience it like it just happened, but it doesn't take up all the space in your life. And so we're trying to encourage people to get the help and the resources that they need through our Hold On to Hope program. It's a community of people that have also experienced this type of loss. And it's medically backed. And we've been doing this for about a year now. We've learned a lot. And we've people on our webinars. We do a webinar the first Thursday of every month. It's open to everyone and it's free. And we often have people who've just very recently lost someone and they're just in shock. But we also have people that are farther down the road and looking for ways that they can survive this horrible journey that they never asked to be on. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do, is to provide them with some of the teaching and education and support that is so desperately needed by this community of people. One of the things we talk about that can really affect the stigmas surrounding suicide is our language, right? The way we talk about suicide. You'll never hear me say the phrase committed suicide, which is very popular in our culture. And I think when you're talking about someone who's died by suicide, you often hear, well, they committed suicide. But what we know about that term, committed suicide, is that it holds a lot of negativity in it, because when we talk about committing things, we talk many times about like committing murder, committing adultery, committing a sin. It's very negative and it's punitive, right? It's usually associated with some criminal activity or very, immoral behavior. And what we are trying to ask people to do is to change the way you speak about it. So if you think about the way people, you talk about cancer, for instance, you wouldn't say somebody committed cancer. You would say they died from cancer. And so dying from suicide is a way to encourage empathy for those who have died and for those who are left behind. And it helps us to have more real conversations without people feeling like, you're speaking so negatively about my loved one. And so that's part of the things that we try to explain is, just watch the way we speak about it. And that can go a long way in helping us change our viewpoint. And having empathy for the one who has died by suicide is extremely important. We remember Connor in the way he lived, not the way he died. And we focus on those positive memories, and we encourage others to do the same, thinking of ways you can remember your loved one, because they meant something to you, to this world. There's good that they have done, and we want to honor that.
I really am. First of all, I'm flabbergasted by the numbers that you just shared, right? I mean, when there's 13,200 people that can be affected by suicide every single day, that's overwhelming, right? Mm-hmm. And part of, I think, what you were just saying is really the sensitivity around what to say and what not to say in situations like this. Because, I mean, it would be, like you brought up cancer. Many times, people don't know what to say to somebody who's just had cancer. Well, it's in the same way. Somebody who has just experienced suicide, they don't know what to say. There's no ill will there at all. But just it's a lack of it. And so I love the fact that Hold On to Hope would allow people to do that. And Lisa, I do have the website up, and looking at that. And so if there's anything there at all that you believe they can go to, especially if they're dealing with this right now, and they're hearing about it, and this is a page that they can go to. It is in honor of your son, but it is full of information and full of resources in that page.
Yeah. So the screen that you're showing right now is actually, it explains a little bit about our Hold On to Hope program. and it actually allows you to sign up for the program. When people sign up for the program and they're a part of it, it's an hour and a half. It's 90 minutes. It's not long. It's at 7:00 the first Thursday of every month. And following, it's interactive too. I just want to make sure people know this isn't just like me lecturing for 90 minutes. It's really trying to get people's feedback, and we do some journaling exercises, and we really try to bring up some of the things that people are struggling with and deal with those on the call. But afterwards, we also send out an email that has all kinds of resources, and those resources are on our website. And anything from, if you're in an immediate crisis, which, if you're in a crisis with someone that you know, or even for yourself, there's now a universal number, just like we call 911 for many of our emergencies. You can actually dial 988 and immediately be connected to someone who's going to be able to talk to you about a mental health crisis, a suicide crisis. And that's very important for our country to have, because, sometimes when you dial 911, you're not going to be in touch with people who might really have the information and support that you need when you're in a suicide crisis. So that number has really been groundbreaking for our country to have that as a resource. There's also other hotlines on there. If some people feel more comfortable texting, if you are a family member, there's all kinds of resources on our website under the resource page. And there's books, there's podcasts, there's support groups, there's other ways that you can get help, right? And so we encourage people to check out our website. So right now you're on the 988 website, but if you go back to the Honor Connor website and go to scroll up to the top, and you'll see a tab for resources.
Okay, hold on a sec.
Yeah. Yeah, good. You can just go to Get Help, right? Go to Get Help.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
There's a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I'm also seeing, so I know that on an individual basis, it's important, but I know that when we were discussing this a little bit, Lisa and Scott, we were talking about how it's available for corporations, it's available for churches. Can you just share that a little bit? Because I can tell you right now, in the industry called mortgage, it's a really hard topic right now. So.
Yeah, the webinar that we offer, like I said, is free for the general public, but we also offer it to smaller groups of people. So to corporations, if they want it to be part of their mental health education, which many corporations have today, this is an option to be able to support your employees, and for them to learn better how to support somebody, even if they haven't personally experienced this. Like you said at the beginning, we all know somebody, right? So how can we be better friends, family members, community, and coworkers, bosses? All those things are important, because like you said, we don't know what to say. So being a part of this webinar can help you find things that you don't want to say and things that you do want to say, and ways that you can support a person who's going through this kind of crisis. We also offer it to smaller groups. Like, for instance, we had a group of women that had lost a mutual friend. They had been friends since college. They got together all the time, and they were grieving as a group of friends. So we did the seminar just for them, and they had a common loss, their friend. So it was good for us to have those conversations. How can they, as friends, support her husband, her kids, her family, right, and themselves in this journey? What's that journey going to look like for them? So we offer that for anybody who has a group of people that they feel would benefit from doing this together. We'll schedule a time that works out for them.
That's fantastic. It had to have been, there's people listening right now that are going to be wondering, it might be so fresh, right? That even if they do know that there are resources there, Scott, I can't even imagine. I'm father of two. I can't even imagine what would be your, I don't know, your word of advice to somebody that might be listening to this right now that is affected by it, maybe freshly affected by it. What are some of the things that you even went through that you would encourage someone, man, don't be alone? What would you say to somebody like that right now, Scott?
Well, yeah, I think Lisa brought it up earlier. There definitely, we did not have resources available to us. And that's one of the reasons why we started Honor Connor, to honor him, because he always wanted to help people. That was one of his goals, that people that dealt with mental health issues, substance abuse issues. So we felt that it was something we needed to do. And I think it's important that if people are experiencing it right now, to understand that there is hope, that they can find joy in their life again. It's not going to happen overnight. I talk about grief and I say grief never ends. It just changes shape, right? So it part of our Hold On to Hope program, Lisa talks a lot about the ball in the box, meaning we're a box and inside us is this giant ball. And this ball has a lot of spikes on it, right? And when someone dies by suicide, that ball fills that box, die anyway, right? A family member, but we're talking specifically about suicide. That ball fills every corner of that box, right? Mm-hmm. So it just takes up all the space, right? The guilt you feel as a parent or as a friend or as a sibling, the sadness that you feel over losing someone, the anger, why did they do this? All these things fill up this box. And at time, that ball gets smaller, right? As over time, that ball gets smaller. It's always there. It's in your box, but it gets smaller. And then some days it gets big again. Maybe it's a birthday, maybe it's a holiday, but then it goes back and gets small again. And the other things in your life can fill that box. The other things that are important in your life, that you have, the love in your life, the family members, the other children, your friends, your job, all those things, that box, the ball is smaller dealing with the grief, and those other things fill up the box. So I want people to know that, yes, today you're devastated, you're heartbroken, your heart's always going to be broken, but you can move forward in your life, find joy, find happiness, and be able to move, on.
But it takes time. I will say, one of the messages that we communicate often on our webinars to people who've recently lost someone is to give yourself the time. It takes time. The way that ball is going to shrink is by self-care in a lot of, what does that mean? That means knowing that you need time to process this. You're not going to get over it anytime soon. And you might need support, right? What does that look like? Support can be a support group. I know that I joined a support group after we lost Connor. That was so important to me because I finally felt like I had people who understood what I was going through. And they had resources available for me that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So reaching out and joining some kind of an ongoing support group can be extremely important. Perhaps it's finding the right therapist. I went to 3 different therapists because I needed different things at different times. It's traumatic. It is very traumatic to lose someone to suicide. So working with a therapist who understands that trauma and can help you through it and use different modalities that are going to be right for you is extremely important.
Yeah, and Connor died in 2016, and we didn't start Honor Connor really until about 2020. So, it took us several years. We knew we wanted to do something, and it just took us several years to get to the place that we could.
Yeah, you actually, and this topic is so important, and what you guys are discussing right now, because when Paul and I were talking to you both, one of the things that I heard you say was that it's because of this subject, even your friendships can shrink down because again, it's almost as if, you might find yourself not necessarily the one that had your son die of suicide, but you're part of that circle, mm-hmm. and how much of an incredible support you could be to someone who's dealing with that. So, I mean, you both felt that, right? I mean, I think you both shared with us that the circle got kind of smaller, right? And tell us a little bit about that. I mean, because there are people that are probably right now not supporting somebody because they don't know how, right? So
I think that's the key is that, we had a big circle, right, of friends, family members, part of a big church. And I think a lot of people don't know what to say. So they don't say anything. And then over time, not saying anything, your friendship starts to fade, right? We were very fortunate that we had, several friends that came alongside us, and our family was amazing. And I think that, that itself, just helped us so much in getting through it. But Lisa, I'm sure you can share some of your feelings on that.
We also had friends that because they didn't know what to say, we lost them. They're not our friends anymore. And we lost a big community too that was important to us, that we just felt like they weren't, you're angry and you're raw. And so when you don't feel supported, it's not like maybe you might feel otherwise. It's so magnified, right? Because you're looking for people to understand you. And it just can really get in the way of making any progress in your grief journey when you feel alone and isolated and like people don't understand. So that's why we're trying to help people know what they can and what they shouldn't do. Like we talk about the 5 love languages, for instance. So, people respond to grief and trauma in different ways. And some people need different things, just like we have different love languages. So some people might really need a lot of affirmation. And so how do you do that? How do you be present with someone who's grieving? And maybe they need physical touch. I didn't want that. I was very prickly pear. I didn't want anyone getting near me. But some other people might really appreciate, holding their hand, giving them a hug, snuggling in next to them. We're all different, right? And we all need different things. So it's trying to understand the person that you're trying to support. What do they need? Or if it's you personally, what do you need in your grief and loss? What's going to help you? And maybe how can you communicate that to the ones who are trying to support you?
Yeah. So many people will ask, what can I do? And we as the grievers, we're okay, right? Because we're strong, we're okay. But reality is just regular executive functionings, just stuff like getting laundry done or going grocery shopping. I mean, when you are going through this process and you're the griever, you're grieving, and someone says, what can I do? Be honest, communicate with them. Hey, you know what? I need to pick up the kids. I just can't do it. I need you to come over and do some laundry for me because it's piling up and I can't get out of my own way. Go to the grocery store. Like Lisa said, the other thing is things that you don't do, right? It's nobody's business how your child died. If someone's asking you, it's not their business, right? People want to know what happened, right? Is there anything you could have done differently, Scott, as the dad? Like, those are not questions you want to ask somebody, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to say things like, gee, your son's in a better place. Well, okay, I want him here with me, you know? So anyhow, this is why we started Hold On to Hope. We actually touch base on all of these things that we dealt with. And we also had focus groups of other families and people that have lost somebody. So we asked them the same question. So we could kind of come up with this program that's clinically backed that actually can help people deal with their loss and also help people come alongside people that are, dealing with that loss, right?